Hello and welcome to Build and Thrive, the podcast that is dedicated to improving the health and the happiness of the construction industry. I'm your host Jenny Armstrong and I'm the founder of Construction Health and Wellbeing. So today we are going to be talking about an aspect of wellbeing that probably doesn't get enough attention that it needs, so financial wellbeing. And I'm joined by two incredible guests, Ryan Briggs and Andrew Russell-Day, who are going to share a little bit about the work they're doing to support the construction industry, but also all industries, about how we can improve our financial wellbeing. So welcome to the podcast, both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. Can you tell us a little bit about you, your role, and why you're here today?
Yeah, sure. I'm Ryan. I run a company called Finwell Training. So the clue's in the title there. We're a training company that specialises in financial education and financial wellbeing, mainly with workplaces and employees. We've been going for about 3 years now. We're just really passionate about getting that education out there and helping people in all sectors really, but particularly construction, because I've been linked to construction for quite a while.
Okay, we'll touch on that in a bit more, Ryan. And Andrew?
Yeah, sure. So, I work for a small company that some people may have heard of, Amazon. The particular team that I work with are responsible for building our distribution network globally. So all of the fulfillment centres and delivery stations across the globe, our team builds them. And my role as Senior Health and Safety Lead within the wider health and safety team, I'm currently focusing on mental health and occupational well-being. Financial well-being obviously has a big part to play in that. So I look after two groups of people, two groups that I'm really responsible. So there's my own team of about 2,000 people across the globe working on our buildings. But also I have a responsibility for our contracted workforce. So that's everybody on our construction sites building the network for us. That commitment to those people are probably stronger for the contracted workforce, purely because the statistics in our industry are so poor around mental and occupational health. As a health and safety manager, I think for too long we've focused on the safety part of the role and have ignored the health. But if you take the statistics into account, the health side of the role is now significantly more important than the safety side. The thing that is causing the most deaths, the thing that is causing the most illnesses is mental and occupational health. So we need to rebalance the focus and get better at doing that.
Yeah, and it's amazing actually to hear that your role is pretty much dedicated to doing that, and it's not something perhaps the typical construction organisation would see in the health and safety team. So we'll explore that a little bit more as we go through today. But Ryan, can you start off to tell us a little bit about what financial wellbeing actually means and why it's important?
Yeah, sure. So financial well-being, first thing probably to say is that it's an outcome rather than a thing you do. So the whole sense of being financially well as opposed to unwell, just like our mental health, really. There's so many similarities between our mental health and well-being and financial health and well-being. There's a few definitions out there, and I prepared by writing one down, actually. One that we use in our training and our workshops is from MAP, so the Money and Pension Service, who are a fantastic government organisation. They believe that it's around feeling secure and in control. These are words that we hear an awful lot. But it's also about knowing that you can pay the bills today, that you can deal with the unexpected. So that looks at a lot of financial resilience, a key part of it. That you're on track for a healthy future and have some sense of hope for tomorrow and the future. And also that you feel confident and empowered. So they're really kind of key words that we use and hear a lot. The only one that we add to that in our work, we're really interested in probably 50% of it, we believe, is around the psychology of this and the psychology of money and our relationships with money, because half of it is understanding and learning what to do, and maybe the need is there because we didn't learn the basics at school, right? But the other half of it is, well, why do we make the decisions that we make? And, why do we have the habits and the attitudes around money, probably passed down from generation to generation in a lot of the time? So it's so important. It's such a big area that if you think about it, impacts our whole life and key stages along life's financial journey.
Yeah. And I suppose, why is it important from an organisational perspective? We talk about workplace stress, but, people will argue this isn't a workplace factor. Why do organisations need to think about it?
Yeah, sure. I think there's so many similarities to mental health and wellbeing. And I think companies have realised, especially over the last 10 years or so, the importance they need to place on looking after their people and their mental health, and awareness around mental health has improved a huge amount. And it's exactly the same. If you look at the root causes of a lot of issues around stress, anxiety, and mental health and well-being, unfortunately, they are linked to money a lot of the time. So it is getting to those root causes. From a company's point of view, I think there's two things. There's the moral aspect or argument, is the right thing to do. And secondly, it makes commercial sense. There's absolutely no problem in a business realizing that it's going to help their people be happier and healthier, safer on site in the construction industry, but also when it comes to productivity and performance and reducing absenteeism and keeping people within the company and not having to spend money on recruitment or attracting talent. All of these things, it makes business sense and moral sense as well.
Yeah, definitely see lots of value, and it impacts everyone. Everyone's got a relationship with money, so it's not a attracting a few people in your organisation. Everyone has got that relationship. So Andy, is there anything that you would add to that, particularly with your role as in health and safety? Particularly things you might have seen about why this is important from a safety perspective.
Yeah, sure. So I think, again, looking at the corporate side of things, I think financial well-being is a part of the overall well-being jigsaw, an important part of that. I think it's easy to assume in any organization that if people are well paid or just simply paid, that they don't have financial issues. And that's clearly not the case. Life happens, things change and can quickly escalate. We have support as part of our employee assistance program. Is that well used? I don't know. I don't have sight of the data, but I would strongly suspect that it probably isn't used as well as it could be. And part of my role this year will be to make people more aware of the services that are available and help them to find them. So better signposting and better understanding of how they can help them and why they should be, looking into them and using them. And also giving them the confidence to use them as well, because that's, as well as the stigma around mental health, I think financial well-being has further stigma. We don't like to talk about the money. And I think very often the only thing stopping people from accessing the help and support that would really help them is themselves. So we have to work on that. When it comes to construction and the people on my sites, my contracted workforce, unfortunately, as you're aware, we're pretty poor at capturing data around mental health, and particularly capturing mental health and any stress-related root causes for incidents. And there's no doubt that many incidents that we have on site are a direct result of that person not being fully present. For a number of reasons, and we don't do it very well. And with the stigma involved, it's often unlikely that people will openly talk about it in a post-incident conversation. So we're just not picking up that information. And we have a workforce where over a third of our workforce is self-employed, so managing a self-employed salary. And through no part of their training or apprenticeships do they get any training on how to manage a self-employed wage. In my role, I don't have to think about my pension, my sick pay, my holiday pay, paying my tax. It's all done automatically. The money I get is then the money I manage. And that's not the case for someone who's self-employed. And even something as basic as knowing you should start a pension as early as possible, it's just not taught. So you have issues with people not being paid on time, not knowing if they'll have continued work, having to subsidize their expenses while they travel or stay away for work. But we also see physical health issues as a direct result, because mental health is physical health. You're working away from home and you have a bad back, it's unlikely that those people are going to lose a couple of days to go back home and see a doctor. So they work through it and they create worse long-term problems for themselves. So that creates a secondary issue, coming from financial well-being. And I've experienced of people not reporting accidents and working through agonizing pain simply because they couldn't afford to lose a day's pay. They haven't understood to take the right insurances to, save for these issues. So yeah, it's a huge problem that we need to deal with.
Yeah, from my kind of nurse background, the amount of examples I could share with you where people have said exactly that to me. I can't take time off work to go and see a doctor. They've got to a point where their injury or their back problem is so bad that they are then, crippled out and, causing lots of challenges for themselves and their long-term health, which then leads to more financial challenges. So yeah, it's very common. And I think even just with the workers that aren't self-employed, they still have that challenge of being able to, make enough money to be able to take time off to do these things. So yeah, it's probably more prevalent in our industry than in others. And Ryan, is there anything that you'd like to add to that point?
I just think it's worth really emphasising that point that Andy made, that it's hard anyway, right? We're all going through challenging times. We're up against it at the moment. But the construction industry is an industry that we've identified as a high-risk industry. So we work in all different sectors across the board throughout the UK and even globally now. But construction and some other sectors, if people are not present, if they're not, focused on the job, if they're worrying about other things, whether that's financial, mental issues, whatever it might be, there's risk to life. There's risk to life and colleagues' lives. It's one of the sectors that we've got a massive focus on because the consequences of this are just so much more extreme than other sectors. So really important to put that across.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll talk about suicide and the high incidence we have in the industry. In my personal experience, I've been closely involved with three suicides that were construction workers on jobs that I was working on, and each of them was financial related. So debt, but also just people sending money back home and not being able to support their families. So it's we can all probably give a lot of examples of how that relates to it. Well, let's talk about Financial Wellbeing Month, because obviously this is something that Andy and Ryan, you're really passionate about and you're promoting. Let's talk about some of the solutions and what organisations can think about. So Ryan, tell us a little bit about Financial Wellbeing Month and what it is trying to do.
I'm even wearing the T-shirt today, Jen.
I can see, yes.
So jealous,
good advertising.
It started, actually, quite funnily, a conversation I had with Alice Hendy, who, anyone that knows Alice and Ripple, suicide prevention charity, amazing charity, very, very sad story about Alice losing her brother to suicide at the age of 21. Our paths crossed and I immediately knew we needed to work together because of these links between financial wellbeing, mental health and suicide prevention. So I'm actually an ambassador of the charity. We had a conversation and we had a love-hate relationship with awareness days because I kind of thought, they can be great, but is it just a bit of a tick box? And it was actually then having a conversation with Simon Blake from Mental Health First Aid England, who actually made me open my eyes a little bit to realise that, well, it might be that for some companies, but for others, it might be the first step that they take around a certain area of well-being or something else. And it might be the most important step, actually. So we said, okay, then, maybe we should try and do something. So we thought, let's not try and repeat all the good work that's already being done around awareness days. There's lots around that in financial wellbeing, pension awareness and talk money and things like that. So we thought, let's create a month, because why not, and really focus on the three areas and the links between the three areas as a nice way to bring in financial education and financial wellbeing. We launched it last April. We had over 100 organisations sign up and support it. We had a whole host of free training, free webinars for employees, lots of tools and resources that if an employer signed up, they could get access to for their teams. And we're stuck with it now, Jenny. It went well. We've got to do it every year. So my team, not so happy with me, but it's brilliant. It's been overwhelming how many people have got involved, and it's got bigger and better. We've now got T-shirts and we've got in-person events. That's why we've got the T-shirts, by the way. We're showcasing the campaign next week at the Health and Wellbeing at Work exhibition. Andy's coming along. We've got guest speakers doing lots of talks. So, there's lots of things that are going on and easy ways for companies to get involved with it.
Yeah, brilliant. I suppose, so this is your second year that you're running it. So by the time this podcast comes out, we're just going to be probably at the very start of it. So hopefully we can use this to help promote what you're doing.
What we wanted was that, yes, we're celebrating Financial Wellbeing Month and the links to mental health suicide prevention in April. But that exact reason, we didn't want it just to be that month. We've made it a 365 all year round campaign where employers, if they hear about it in February or in November, they can get on board, sign up and support the campaign, and then get access to all the recordings all the other materials, the employer's guide that we've put together. So yes, we'll celebrate it in April, but it's definitely an all year round campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, Andrew, what you've seen from construction organisations engaging with Financial Wellbeing Month, but also the initiatives, have you seen that working well?
No, not to date. I mean, last year was the first Financial Wellbeing Month, and that was really just the kickoff. And Ryan and the team did an amazing job just to get it off the ground. And I'm confident that it's going to go from strength to strength year on year. I think financial well-being is a really overlooked component of the overall well-being strategy. We're not great at talking about money, particularly when it's a negative issue. We don't have a problem talking about it, when it's falling out of our pockets. But to actually admit that you're having financial issues, again, as I said earlier, huge stigma attached to that. Very, very difficult to talk about. It is still an uncomfortable and taboo subject. I think it is getting better. I mean, we got two big celebrities talking about it now, Martin Lewis and Ryan Briggs. And really pushing it and really helping to educate. But people are, if you take Martin Lewis as an example, he's really managed to get people to buy into that understanding and taking control of their finances. And that's what this is all about, is taking control and being confident, having the knowledge to do the right things. And Ryan and Financial Wellbeing Month is right behind that and supporting it. From an industry or business perspective, I think it's taken a long time to find the right strategical approach, because it's just not the type of subject people typically want to discuss with their peers or with their manager or with their team. And that's where I think Financial Wellbeing Month has probably really nailed it, as well as the initiatives Ryan and Finn well run. It's about talking about the subject, letting people know that they're not alone. And that they're not bad people for not knowing, and you don't know what you don't know. Provide them the knowledge to understand, and then give them the tools to help themselves in their own time. And I think that's a really important strategy when we're talking about finances, that we don't talk down to them, we don't tell them what to do. You give them the correct knowledge, and then you give them the tools to figure it out and sort it. And we've got a captive audience on our construction sites. It's a perfect perfect opportunity to introduce the topic. Within our toolbox talks, we talk about falling from heights, we talk about slips, trips, and falls. Let's start talking about well-being topics. Let's bring it to them and provide them the tools on site. I mean, the opportunities just to stick QR codes and posters up everywhere is really simple. To have someone with a high vis saying, Financial Wellbeing Month, talk to me. It's really easy, It's too much talk, not enough doing. I think that's what I'm most frustrated about in our industry.
Yeah, and I think I share that frustration when I hear lots of research papers coming out and talking about the suicide challenges that we've got. Like, right, so let's talk about what actually some of the solutions are and what we actually can start to do and what organisations can do, rather than thinking it's all an individual problem. I think there's still a massive educational piece to see that organisational role in this.
I do, and I think it's really, really important now as well for people like myself with the client role. We have a huge influence over our vendors and our contractors. We're very specific in our contracts with what we'd like you to do on many different subjects. So let's start including mental health and well-being of that workforce that are working on our behalf, to support them. Let's use our influence to make positive change.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point about the clients playing a part in this as well, and even talking about some of the financial stresses that come from programs, and if it's from day one it's built in as such a key value of what that project is. Yeah, it makes it so much easier for the contractors to then start engaging and allowing the time and space for workers to engage. So it's amazing to hear.
I'm going to say there's still loads of work to be done. We know that in construction, but just to shout out to Andy really and the others that have got involved, it's been really encouraging to see a number of organisations coming together, and it's actually leading the way. So the reason we created more of a sector specific approach to the campaign this year is because we saw out of those 100 companies that signed up and supported it last year, there were certain clusters from certain sectors, and construction actually was the biggest one. And what we've done this year is create various different sector-specific groups, of which the construction one has by far led the way, partly to Andy and him being involved. But that's given us an opportunity to understand what the strategy needs to be for Financial Wellbeing Month, linking it to mental health and suicide prevention for construction. And we've done loads of work at Finwell, partnering with Mental Health First Aid England and Ripple Suicide Prevention and others to find out what works in construction, because this is a really key point. What works for us dealing with legal companies or sales-based companies, or, it doesn't work in construction. We've learned some really, really key things, some of which I'm happy to explain, that do work in construction. And we created the steering group that Andy leads on, and ask the questions, what's working, what's not. And from that, the strategy really is client involvement, as Andy said. That's why he's at the table here, because he's got such an important role, such an influential role as the client to be involved with this, kind of lead on it. Then we've learned it has to be in person, trying to get people off site and dialing into Zoom calls or getting them all together too long off site and doing their work isn't going to happen. So getting onto site, getting it that in-person time, really, really important. I think having it site or project based and the whole supply chain involved as well. So again, that goes back to the client being involved and getting, principal contractors and supply chain involved as well. Linking all the three areas. So we're seeing some great work being done with mental health first aiders maybe on site, and occupational health, mental health nurses, things like that on site. We can try and add financial wellbeing to that now as well. We've got a real holistic approach to this. And then the last one, which I think is the most important, companies will probably like to hear this, that it has to be measurable. We're not just talking about coming down and having a little chat and, ticking a box. It has to be measurable. And that's the next steps really, is to roll this out across various different projects and sites and be able to report back from a campaign point of view, what's been done, where have we been, how many people have we seen. We've got ways that we can measure financial wellbeing now and start to see some outcomes and goals being achieved and improvements being made. It has to be positive impact. Otherwise, again, we're just talking and no action.
Yeah, and again, we're in a culture where we talk about health and safety stats all the time. How many people have been injured? What's the lost time injury rate this month? Yeah, having some metrics that sit alongside that probably will get a lot more attention than perhaps some of the safety incidents where we've seen lots of improvements. I love that about the data, and I think especially all industries now are recognising data is helping us drive performance. And for us at Construction Health, it's one of our key values about evidence-based practice. So I just wondered if you had anything that you wanted to share specifically from research or anything that you've come across that's an interesting stat or fact that our listeners might like. So Ryan, did you want to share anything?
We've got loads of stats and data. I won't bore you with all of it because we piloted this for 12 months on construction sites. So we have, it's freely available. We share it on our website and want to get that out there. But the one sort of stat that we share a lot that people might be surprised about is actually about this relationship with money. And we all have a relationship with money. It's what we're really interested in, that side of it at Finwell. But you might be surprised as to when our relationship with money is ingrained in us by. A lot of people think when we ask this in group workshops and the training that we do, some people say, oh, maybe it's around 18 or early 20s when you might, become an adult and venture out. And it's actually by the age of 7. There's certain adverts, I won't mention the name of the bank, that are sort of really getting this out there, which is great. But this has been around for a long time. There was some research done by the top universities in the UK, and they found that, our relationship with money, our attitudes, our behaviours, our biases are ingrained in us by that age. And you think, well, why is that? And it's because of various things. Our upbringing, did we have access to money or not? Was money a challenge growing up? Did we get access, through pocket money or learn the value of money as we grew up? Was it a cause of stress for our parents or carers? All of these things, lend themselves to making us have our own decisions and habits and behaviours with money. I think we need to focus on that a little bit to understand why we make these decisions, to then start to try and change them as well.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned a little bit about education in schools, but it comes back to that, if they've really got to start be thinking about it at such an early age, to particularly if you grow up in an environment where the financial issues are quite prevalent. I can imagine that there's a big part schools can play to try and alleviate some of that. Yeah, I'm sure I would love to see some more of that research to understand actually what it means. And my daughter's 3, so if there's anything I can do at this point to mean she's going to be financially successful in the future, that will help my retirement.
Yeah, definitely. It is encouraging, just to say a point on that work is being done. There's organisations like Go Henry and My Bank and Young Enterprise that are doing brilliant stuff to get it on the agenda in schools, and that is happening. But what we've obviously got is this huge amount of people that are leaving school now, or us in the work environment, that didn't get any education around basic money matters. And we had to learn from our own mistakes, right? A lot of us, quite costly mistakes as well.
Yeah, definitely. And Andy, anything from you, any stats that you've come across that you've found interesting?
Yeah, sure. The stat I'd like to share on this, and it's a real quick one, is financial worries are the main cause of stress for 34% of construction workers. And whilst that's on the face of it a fairly negative statistic, that a third of people have got financial stress and worries, I think it's also really important for those people that might be listening or watching, that hear that stat, to know that you're not alone. And I think very often when we get into these sorts of pickles, that we feel we're the only people going through it, and we can't talk, we can't look for help because of that. But to know that it's not, it's on the whole, it's not anything you've done, it just happens. And seek help, because we're all ready to listen.
Yeah, and find the resources. Brilliant. Okay, that's some really interesting and insightful stats there. I suppose let's come back to more about strategies and solutions, so things for people to take away, what they can do. And Ryan, I mean, is there any kind of simple things that you would recommend to organisations that they could start really embedding this within their kind of health and wellbeing strategies?
Yeah, so I mean, as a company, what we provide ultimately is financial education and training. So that's the stage that we get in. But even before that, there's loads employers can do. It has to start with fair pay, obviously, and on-time payments as well, and the amount that people are being paid. It's an issue in the construction industry with supply chains and payments. Certain policies and procedures that are in place when it comes to finances as well, expenses, things like that, having to shell out possibly for accommodation or travel, not getting that money back, that can be looked at. Having better communication around some of your employee benefits and what service providers are available. Andy talked about EAPs and other things. Just communicating those better can have a massive impact. But the education side is just huge. We didn't get that from an early age. So employers have an opportunity. We talk a lot about, well, is it the responsibility of a company to do that? I don't think it is, actually. Yeah, if you want really good people and happy people and highly performing and productive people, yes. But it's an opportunity to put this in place to get the most out of your people and to attract the best people. So, and another thing that we're really hot on at the moment is trying to upskill people internally. So not just looking at, everybody on site, but looking at some key employees, influential employees, managers, supervisors, mental health first aiders, wellbeing champions, people like that are already on site. We designed some training to upskill those people so they can, spot the signs of their colleagues, people in their team or their gang, have those conversations. People haven't got the confidence at the moment to sort their own financial well-being out, perhaps, let alone having the confidence to then, have conversations and maybe effectively signpost other people. So there's a little bit of training involved here. But yeah, there's loads of things. I think just being open, like Andy said, that we're not alone and this does impact everybody. However much money you get paid doesn't equate to good financial well-being. I've seen it time and time again, so we can all improve or learn something from this.
Yeah, and I know when we first started talking, Ryan, I kept thinking, back as my day as a nurse on a site, I'd have people come and talk to me. I'd do their blood pressure, I'd talk to them about their diet, but I mean, it wasn't a skill that us as nurses would ever have. And actually, we're probably the type of roles that would get a lot of engagement with the site workers, and they would probably have more trust to talk to us. So yeah, I'm sure there'd be lots of interest from our age professionals
it's important
as well.
It's important as well, Jenny, just as you saying that what it's not here and what we're not talking about, it's not just having lots of money, but it's also not, we're not creating financial advisors on site or experts or, Martin Lewis's on sites. It really is just the basic skills, very, very similar to mental health awareness, to be able to spot the signs, to be able to just have empathetic conversations and then effectively signpost either to the benefits that the organisations are offering or external tools or resources. It's the basic skills that will have a huge impact, though, if that confidence is there.
Yeah, I can imagine. And Adam, from your perspective, I know Ryan touched a little bit about that face-to-face engagement's important in construction, and I completely agree that you can't put a webinar on and think that the site teams are going to be able to have time to do that. What have you seen that's particularly worked well for trying to improve on this topic?
Yeah, I think one of the things I've been investigating in the last year is to, across a number of different skills, is to actually have people available on our sites, to change the face of our sites. We've got, as I said before, we've got a captive audience. We've got a lot of people on our site, that are in there, within our gates from the moment we start to the moment we finish. So we have an opportunity to provide support there and then. We have all these cabins set up. There's no reason that we couldn't have, for example, an occupational health nurse on site to triage people and make the suggestion what to do with their physical health. There's no reason we shouldn't have, a mental health nurse on site occasionally that people can drop into. And I think when those functions are there on site as a drop in and people talk about them, we start to destigmatize it. It doesn't become a big mystery, and it only takes one or two people to be seen going through the door before, there'll be a queue of people pounding to go and talk to this person and find out what it's all about. And I think it's the same with the financial well-being as well. By just having someone on site talking about it and socializing the subject through toolbox talks and through poster campaigns and stuff, and having on-site champions, but then giving them the opportunity to actually speak to someone face to face to demystify it all and understand what it's all about, and just get that foot on the ladder of where you're going to go on that financial well-being journey. I think that's the future for me. That's where I see that we have to go. We have to, if you're very rarely going to get people. It's very difficult. Take the UK. If you've got a mental health issue, if you haven't got an employee assistance program and you need to get help on the NHS, it's a long, long wait for that.
Just on that, Jenny, we have learned that lesson, really valuable lesson as well, that particularly for the construction industry, it's not good enough to just do it over like one day or have a special week. We piloted it and we learned that even if it was little and often, the often bit is the important bit, the consistency of being there, where whatever budgets can allow, right? We get that. Budgets aren't just free flowing at the moment, but if we can spread it over the life cycle of the project and put it in the planning of the project, it reduces impact on the work being done as well. That's what happens. Every site that we piloted this with, to start with, there was skepticism. It took a little while for John, who leads the team, to explain what he was there for and what he was there not for. The fact that he wasn't selling, there's no products to sell, there's no advice to be given, and really linking it to mental health and physical health. What then tended to happen was a few people kind of signed up and did the one-to-one sessions. Then before you know it, they're talking about it in the canteen or on site. Very much that kind of changing room mentality that I know about through sport in another life. And that's what happens. You've also got to make this available to people so they can take the step forward when they're ready and when they're comfortable. So having it, the days that people are going to be on site posted up, as Andy said, some sort of schedule. They know that, actually next month or the month after, I'm going to speak to John or whoever about their mental health or physical health, financial well-being. Really important. And you're just going to see more and more engagement over time until it becomes the norm, and people know, hopefully, this is the dream, that once they leave one site, if they're working for a certain contractor or a certain client, they're going to go on to another project, and that same support is going to be available. That's the consistency that we want to get to over time, hopefully.
Ryan, I just want to tackle something you said there. I'm in total agreement of you that, yeah, too often we hear budgets are tight and we got to constrict. I think that's an awful excuse. I think that is, and it is just an excuse. Okay, these initiatives don't cost a huge amount of money, and when you break it down per person across the site, what that costs, it's minimal. Okay, but the potential return, because it should be seen as an investment, it's an investment not only in the people, but it's an investment in your business as well. Because when you start working to alleviate the mental, health and well-being issues of those people, whether it be financial stress, anxiety, whatever it is, you're going to get a better quality of
Yeah.
product on your
Yeah.
site. You're not going to suffer from as many lost time days to sickness. And incidents will probably reduce as well, because, like I say, we don't have the data, but there's no doubt that a number of the incidents on our site are caused by people not being fully present due to mental health concerns. So yeah, I think we have to break through that. Oh, we can't afford to pay a few extra grand on this particular project, because it's an investment. It's going to get you a return, right?
Yeah, I think we went to the same conference a little while back, Jenny, and it was interesting to hear some of the people saying that there's really only two reasons why change will happen, and it comes down to either money or legislation. So either, companies have to realise they're going to be penalised financially by not doing this, or they're going to gain financially. I think that's the harder one, because they won't see the financial gain until maybe further down the line, or legislation or pressure. Why it's so important for people like Andy and the clients to be involved with this, to be putting pressure on to have safer sites, to have these sorts of interventions and initiatives on site. So it does force the contractors and the supply chain to all get involved. But it's so important. It's no good then investing, as Andy said, if there is some budget, brilliant. But what we've got to do as Finwell and other providers and other people involved is have those measurable stats and data to show I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we can say absenteeism has reduced by X% because of this thing that we're doing, but we can get closer to that. And if we can start to see stats improving and stories as well, personal stories, we've got loads of these from the pilots that we did, where some of the interventions we were involved with have had a real positive impact. These personal human stories need to be shared as well as just the data and the stats, because it only paints half a picture.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I was just thinking as well, you imagine setting a project up without any health and safety budget at all. We've learned over years of incidents happening that you need to put money aside to make sure that we've got the right PPE and the right tools and equipment and the right resources. And actually, a health and wellbeing perspective, it's normally the afterthought. And we're like, oh, we'll just throw something in here and there. And actually, if it's thought about early, priced properly, built into to all of the contracts, then actually this can just be a part and parcel of how work is done. So yeah, I think there's lots of thoughts about how do we find ways to integrate this at different phases of the construction workforce.
If we were losing 2 people a day in construction to slips, trips and falls or electrocution, money and people would be all over it. We wouldn't stop until we resolved it. But we're quite happy to allow 2 suicides in our industry a day, and just totally ignore the subject, and that's wrong. And it needs to change.
And everything that you've shared is some of those steps that organisations can start to do to improve that. It's we know the problems, we know the stats, we now need to start taking action, and something like this, whatever it needs to be at this point, is something that's going to help improve and move things forward. It's not going to do the opposite effect. It's just going to show that we are trying to take action. And I love what you're saying, Ryan. And the data needs to be there, and we can back it up. And once we can start to visually show everyone, it'll be, we like to think in the future, it will be part and parcel of how we do things in our industry and others as well. Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been a really insightful conversation, and there's plenty more that we can talk about. But I just want to finish on our final feature where we get a little bit personal, so feel free to share what you're comfortable with. But what are some of your own kind of tips about keeping yourself healthy and happy? So let's start with you, Ryan. Anything that you like to share that looks after your own well-being?
Andy mentioned this before, that the fact that you're not alone. People have come before you and experienced these things before and got through them. however bad it might be or positive it might be. So you're not alone. I think also accepting that there are ups and downs in life. You have to accept it and expect it almost. Sometimes you wake up and just things happen and you just feel bad. That's going to happen. So recognizing it and knowing that tomorrow's another day and things change, getting a bit of balance in and looking at your well-being and focusing and doing certain things that are going to improve that, whether it's, I don't know, listening to music or going to the gym or going for a walk or whatever it might be. For me, gratitude's a huge one, just latching on to the things that we can be grateful for, and we've all got them. We're all luckier than we realise. We think about it. And finally, just not taking life too seriously. We're here for a good time and not a long time is a quote that I always use. Let's enjoy the time that we have and with the people that we get to share it with as well.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny, I asked this question to all of our guests, and gratitude comes up almost every single time people will talk about that. So yeah, definitely something we can all probably take away. And you, Andy, what about you? What's some things that look after your own health and well-being?
Yeah, two things. Have a hobby. I've got my drum kit behind me.
Brilliant.
Just have something that you can focus and concentrate on that allows you to forget about all the craziness in the world and in your own lives. Even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes a day, just something that takes you out of that. And then I think my second tip, and it was something I learned many years ago, is confront the things that cause you stress. And it's probably one of the most difficult things to do because we hide from it, we run from it. But take back control. And I know from experience, the first step's always the hardest, but speaking to your manager if you have issues at work, making that first phone call to try and manage your debts, or, just telling someone, a friend or a colleague that you're not okay. It does feel like climbing a mountain, but I honestly can say from personal experience, once you take that first step, the relief that you feel is immense, and it becomes easier to continue dealing with your problem. And it's so try and confront the things that cause you stress.
A problem shared is a problem halved is what they're saying, isn't it? And
I think it's absolutely true.
Well, maybe you'll give us a little bit of a rendition on your drum
kit
before we go.
I just wanted to say, Jenny, I don't know if anyone's watching this and getting a little bit of a Phil Collins vibe.
Is that what it is?
I can feel it coming in the air tonight.
I hope that's not a remark towards my baldness.
I wasn't saying anything, Andy. We're good friends, and we'll stay that way.
Because I'm seeing you on Tuesday. So
those drumsticks look a bit lethal. Brilliant. Oh, thank you both. I really appreciate you giving so much time to the show today. If people want to get in touch and find out more about Financial Wellbeing Month, where do they need to go?
The website, so just financialwellbeingmonth.com. Have a look. You can sign up for free, get your company involved, you get access to all the good stuff, all the free stuff, and you'll find out more about what we're actually doing in construction. We've got a bit of a strategy for the next 12 months where all of the stuff we've talked about, we're going to be doing and seeing how it goes. We're going to be trying to get to around as many sites as we can and reporting back the data and the impact that we're having and the proof's in the pudding, like they say.
Yeah, brilliant. And we'll make sure all of the details are in the show notes so people can access it. And Andy, for you, if people want to get in touch, ask you some questions about your drumming or your role as a client.
PhilCollins.com is it?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn under my name. And no doubt, if you're searching for the Financial Wellbeing Month hashtags, I'm tagged in quite a few of the discussions on there as well, so you'll be able to find me pretty easily on LinkedIn. I think I'm joining your call again next month as well. I'm usually available.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for everyone for listening. Please remember to like, share and subscribe. If you've got any feedback on today's episode or anything that you'd like to see in the future, please do get in touch. My final thank you is to GKR Scaffolding, who are sponsoring the podcast. And that's it for today. So we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.